Windows open. Awesome. So this is the Millionaire Talk Show. My name is Charles Oglesby, also known as Todd Millionaire. And thank you guys all for tuning in. This is our fourth time being on YouTube today because we're turned all the way up, man. I need all the content. I tell people that my goal is to create my own television network. So I got to get you as much content as possible. And there's a lot of power that comes when you have your own television network. One of the cool things you can do is you can talk to people that are doing really cool things that aren't just business wise, but are also political. I was watching a YouTube video last night and they're talking about how all these different facets work together: economics and politics and family and community and all that stuff works together. And a lot of times we can kind of aim for one, miss the other, neglect one, miss the other. Sometimes we're too heavily political and not economic enough. And sometimes we're too economic and not political enough. But nevertheless, you guys are in for a treat because we're going to do it a little bit different today. We have Jeremy Johnson. And it's interesting is I wasn't sure if it was him or his twin because they look identical. But I was like, I hope that's him because I have a more of a connection with you personally. But either way, we would have still had the conversation because anytime I see somebody who's running for office, I want to find a way to help them accomplish their goal in any way that I can, whether it's giving them exposure, whether it's donating to their campaign, whatever that looks like, that's always the goal. So Jeremy Johnson running for commissioner, what is 6 or Augusta?
Yes, District 6 commissioner in Augusta, Georgia.
Commissioner in Georgia. So before we get into all of that, can you go ahead and let people know who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Jeremy Johnson. I'm a real estate investor, real estate fund manager. Grew up in Philly. My mom moved us to Georgia when I was in middle school to kind of get us away from the things that you see in Philly. Like, I grew up in Philly during the crack era. So moved us to Georgia. I got my first business license when I was 20 years old. I was literally doing club promotion, concert promotion, and I wasn't old enough to buy a drink myself. From that, during the 2008 economic crisis, I was so far down that I was sleeping on my friends' couches, ended up joining the military, did that for a few years, deployed to Afghanistan, got introduced to real estate while I was still in uniform. And within 2 years of buying my first rental property, I was out of the military, completely doing real estate investing full time, and that's all I've done. I haven't needed a day job since I got out of the military.
Yeah. So we've talked about your story on previous episodes. For all of you guys watching, make sure you go listen to the other episodes because he was on the original podcast, Todd Capital, the Millionaire podcast. He was also on Tweet Talks. We were talking about different things he was doing. But in terms of real estate development, what's changed since we last talked? Like, what cool things are you doing right now?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think the last time we spoke, I was still building out real estate portfolios for investors. So our firm would build and manage real estate portfolios. Then I realized that I was not going to create the change that I wanted to see in the Black community by causing us to remain as tenants. Now, what I was able to do while building out rental portfolios is still improve communities, because if our firm is directing the dollars, then we literally would pick where these properties were being purchased, renovated, and we made sure that we were getting families into newly renovated homes, when we even had a program that did not do credit or criminal background checks. So we didn't use your past against you, but without also needlessly exposing our investors to, so we had a careful screening process that didn't center on credit and criminal checks, right? And we were very successful with that strategy, but ultimately we weren't going to improve the economic situation for the Black community by keeping them as renters. So even though it would have made sense to them, right? Because it's obviously easier to rent than it is to qualify for a mortgage. And it would have made sense for us because we would have had that residual income. Ultimately, my goal is to improve the economic standing and positioning of the Black community. So we got out of rental properties completely. Like we don't manage any properties. Even on my personal portfolio, I've been selling off my rental properties to buy dirt. So we're buying dirt and building. That's the new play.
Yeah. Everybody's saying that's the new play, is to go ground up. Is that just because you're getting squeezed, the properties are becoming more expensive and it's becoming more expensive to rehab?
Yeah, so absolutely. It's twofold. One is because as an investor, if you only know how to do, say, wholesaling, or you only know how to do buy and rent out, you're a one-trick pony and your time is coming, right? Because the market never stays the same. So you always, as an investor, you want to have multiple strategies. You always want to be able to pivot. It just so happened that with the market being as crazy as it is right now it's a seller's market. It's to your advantage to sell your properties, but to sell your property and sit with the money and have nothing, you're not putting the money back into some type of investment. That's like selling your car for gas money. It doesn't make sense. So we started selling the rentals and then reinvesting it back into the dirt to build it from the ground up. So we're still putting the money, we're just taking it from one form of real estate and putting it right back into real estate. We're not living off the money.
That is dope. I never thought about that, because we have some properties and we also have some dirt. And the idea is always to take your property and buy more property instead of taking the property, selling it, and then using it to build something that's going to be worth way more than if you were to go take it to market. And then and then the value really becomes in your creativity, because if you're building ground up, you can build as much value as you want to. If you can build 4 stories, 5 stories, whatever up, as opposed to you looking at this and they're like, this is a duplex. So why has it got to be a duplex? You got all that land back there. You guys didn't actually do this intelligently. That is powerful. We're not going to talk about real estate though. We're talking about your political aspirations. What led you there, man?
You want the honest story? The honest story really is our district, our current commissioner is a great guy, but he's term limited. He can't run for this term. And they needed someone in that seat that was going to be for us, that understand the position of Black people and that have a vested interest in improving that, right? Because you might have some people who say, well, why does it have to be about Black people? If you're trying, why can't it just be everyone? Well, if there is one body part that's not functioning well, you don't go to the doctor and say, hey, I want you to check out my entire body. You go and you need to have special care and attention to the part that's not working right. And right now we understand that it's the Black community that's economically behind. So there has to be a special emphasis to bring them back up online and on par with everyone else so that we can move America forward, but you can't move America forward while leaving the Black community behind. It doesn't work that way. Right. So they needed someone, that's a long way of saying they needed someone in that seat that understood that position, right? So yes, we are for moving the entirety of Augusta forward, but in order to do that, you've got to pay special attention to the part of Augusta that hasn't been moving online with the rest of Augusta.
Yeah. What exactly is a commissioner?
Great question. So a commissioner essentially is a voting body for the city, because the commissioners, between the mayor and the commissioners, when a new initiative or a program is proposed, someone has to say either A, that makes sense for the city, or it doesn't make sense for the city. And that's essentially the role of commissioners. We evaluate initiative, issues, programs, and processes, and we say, hey, what will it take to move our city forward? And so you have, a commissioner for each district in the city. We have super commissioners, and together we vote on those issues, not just based off of how it impacts our local district, but how it affects the city as a whole.
What's the process of running for office?
Now that part, that's interesting, because I'm still learning those ropes, because 30 days ago, this wouldn't have even been a consideration. I had not got the phone calls like, hey, we think that you'd make a good fit for this. So as I understand so far, it is, you do have to send some paperwork through state. You go down to your local board of elections. And so what I will say is that the process has been streamlined for me, because of people that I work with, and then the Board of Elections themselves, they literally will walk you through like, hey, they have no vested interest one way or the other. They just say, hey, these are the things that you need to fill out. This is what it needs to look like. So the process is simple in that, and I'd say it's no more difficult than applying for your business license.
Are you running against anybody, or is it just like a non-contested race?
No, I have two other gentlemen who are running as well. I think that they could be great candidates in their own right. I think that what I bring to the table, though, is actual real world experience in terms of raising capital, putting capital into the community. So I think that I understand things not just from a community advocate, which is needed in the community, but also I think that there has to be a certain level of business acumen that's brought to the table as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I was going to ask you is, you said that they had identified you as a candidate or as somebody who would be good for the role. Is that through your development experience and through being a real estate investor that you got exposed to city officials and things like that?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I really don't know why I got the phone call. If I'm being completely honest, and this is not false humility. And you know how people talk about, you enter the race at the 11th hour. It literally was the 11th hour. So March 11th, I think it was. March 11th was the last. So March 11th, which was that Friday at 12 noon, was the last. That's when all candidates had to be, registered to participate in the elections. And I got a phone call Thursday night at 11 o'clock. And so I was like, I literally, it hadn't even crossed my mind. I did understand like working with the commission because our development projects have to go before the board. They have to go before the commission. So I understood it from the investor side, but I never imagined myself being on the commission side of things. Because I'm a hands-on guy. And I'll tell you that once I'm elected, there are projects in city funding that I won't have access to because obviously there's a conflict of interest, right? I can't vote for things that I make money off of. So it's interesting I'm used to being on the investor side of things, bringing things before the commission, not necessarily being on the commission and evaluating the things. But I think that's where I bring something to the table, because if you know what it's like to have to put together a development project, then it makes it easier for you to evaluate with experience and say, hey, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. Hey, and it's not just trying to deny people, it's actually giving them. So let's say you have a development team that brings something, an initiative, but there's some things that they have overlooked, right? So it's not just us saying, hey, no, we don't like it. It's more like, hey, we like the idea. We want you to go back and tweak these things. And then we feel comfortable presenting it to our constituents because that's who we represent.
That's interesting. So, all right, you get elected. What's your plan going forward?
To learn. Everyone has these plans of, if you vote for me, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. To be honest, community development is a group project. It's not just leadership. It's not just elected officials. You've got to have the community on board. So the first thing is to listen and to learn. Hey, what do we feel we need to move the city forward, right? Because we got to have those conversations. But then now it's our job to say, okay, this is what people are looking for. Now, there's a part of moving a city forward that people do know about. They just on a couch level, like, you might be a place and they say, hey, we need more grocery stores and these food deserts. These are things that people know. But then sometimes the community will ask for things that actually would be to their detriment. So they might say something like, and this is not necessarily reflective of Augusta. I'm just throwing out an example just to kind of show you how sometimes if you don't understand how the whole economic base works, then you might, as a private, taxpayer, you might ask, well, we need to do something about these property taxes. These property taxes are too high, not understanding that the property taxes is what funds your schools. So if you are lowering the property taxes, you lower the tax base, then you're not going to get the quality of teachers that you would want teaching your children because their pay is partially funded by those property taxes. So you got to have the talk with the community, understanding what they feel they need, but also understanding on the other side, we want to be able to provide solutions, but solutions that don't just improve the right now, but that improves the thereafter. Does that make sense?
It does, which makes me wonder, are you guys going to be doing things to maybe educate the community on some things that might be more beneficial to them that they might not be aware of, or like what's the approach for that?
Now, that's something that I strongly believe in because, believe it or not, and I say this is across the board. Now, one of the things that I do just as an investor, as a fund manager, is I travel from place to place to place, finding out what works in other locations. I know you invest in Detroit, and I've been to Detroit several times. I like Detroit. So, but one of the things that I see consistently is that many cities, they actually have a lot of initiatives that are in effect. They don't need to be voted on. They are actually in practice, in play, but they're not properly promoted within the community. So even when we come to first-time homeowner options at the city, your housing and community or housing development authority, they have home buyers assistance programs that are not even openly known. It's not public knowledge, even though it exists for the community. So to answer that question, when it comes to, that's my first order of business, learning what are all the things that are actually already available, don't need to be voted on, that are just not being properly promoted within the community.
Yeah. One of the things that I like that you said earlier, I mean, amongst many things that you said that I've liked, is you made a point that we have to help African American people because they're the people who are holding or who are behind economically. Why do you think that is? And as commissioner, how are you going to address that?
Well, I mean, there's a myriad of reasons why we've been behind. I mean, slavery itself was an economic injustice. It wasn't just a mistreatment of civil liberties. It was an economic injustice. Anytime one group of people are allowed to profit off of another person's labor and to do so in a way that's unpaid, and then to further give themselves 3 rounds of Homestead Acts where millions of acres of land were given out, literally given out. And the entire time that the world, when you learn about world history and the Industrial Revolution, that's when the rest of the world, the entire globe, was learning how to go from agriculture to mechanics. The entire time that the rest of the world was going through the Industrial Revolution, we were still in chains, right? So there's a 400-year lag between unequal or unequal distribution of resources, right? So then you fast forward that to today, and there's still, it's hard to catch that up within, just in the short amount of time that we've stopped Jim Crow laws, because we're not going to pretend that once they, Emancipation Proclamation, that the resources have never been redistributed. So that's probably the easiest way to answer that question. The resources have never been redistributed.
I have a theory, and the theory is that I feel like a large part of the reason for the wealth gap is that we're under the illusion of equality right now. And a lot of times we'll look back and we'll say, okay, slavery, and we'll say Jim Crow, but there was actually, I think, some economic parity during Jim Crow, unless I'm mistaken, where Black folks could afford to live in the same neighborhood as white folks, and they were moving out. And now I feel like there's this illusion where wages are kept artificially low, which is not talked about. And I think that we have to kind of demystify and understand what's really going on, because there's a lot of segregation. There's a lot of even slavery that still goes on. It's just packaged up differently. And so we don't even realize that we're really under the same system. It just looks different. And so we're not even swinging at the right stuff.
I agree with you 110%. And this is what I'll tell you. If our ancestors worked somewhere that they would never own, and you fast forward to 2022 and you still work somewhere that you will never own, economically, you're still in the same position, even if you're being paid, right? So the only difference is they weren't paid, but they were given housing, as far as the conditions were, they were given housing, clothing, and food. You're being paid, but most of your income goes to housing, clothing, and food. So, but you're still in a position where you don't own. And when it comes to ownership and the distribution of resources, you've got to be an owner in every respect if you are going to be equals. Because what happened, unfortunately, during the civil rights era was we redefined what it means to be equal. It used to be, you have a bus, I have a bus. This is equality. after the civil rights movement, it became, you allow me to sit on your bus. Now, guess what happens? If it does not matter what seat you have on the bus, if someone else controls if you can afford to get on the bus.
Right.
Right. So once we've abandoned owning businesses to work for someone else's business, and we think that them being willing to promote us within the business that they own, that we've redefined that as being equality. Well, if white-owned businesses are the standard by which you measure your own equality, then by definition, Black-owned businesses become substandard, subpar. And you can see it in even how we view European labels as designer and Black-owned labels we want to discount in the hookup. And that's, you can't close the economic wealth gap with that mindset.
It's interesting because when you put it that way, I don't seem as crazy. I don't feel as crazy for not wanting to work that system. And because we're having a conversation about tech jobs versus like entrepreneurship, because as we've seen a shift in leadership in America, I'm not seeing as heavy an emphasis on business ownership and investing and teamwork and group economics. It's now kind of shifted towards getting higher paying jobs and getting included into the Supreme Court or what have you. And it just doesn't excite me. I don't get excited when I see stuff like that. And I think a part of it is because we've seen how that plays out. We got all excited. We got a president. We waited 8 years. And we probably are like further behind than we should have been, because even if we didn't make any progress, everybody else was making progress. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's not enough to like literally take a step back. It's like if you're not progressing in line with everybody else, you've effectively taken a step back.
That's exactly what's happening. And to your point, we've been sold this again, symbolism has been the new marker of progress. They name a street after you, they name a building after you. That's not progress. They take down a statue. That's not progress. Progress has to be measured in economics. Nothing else matters, dollars and cents, because we live in a capitalistic society. So to try to measure progress by anything else besides dollars and cents is literally, it's smoke and mirrors.
That's so true. All right, so back on track, man. Curious, do you have any plans to go further than this? Once you accomplish this goal, do you want to go politics?
The only way that I can see myself going further in politics is if I see that I am being invited in rooms that allow me to redirect resources to our community. Yeah. So I'll tell you this, and this is not being bragging. Really, any political leader will tell you this, and this is something I just found out as I'm running. The leadership, the commissioners for where I am, make less than $25,000 a year to hold that position. So I share that to say that you've got to in order to be in politics, you've really got to have a heart for people, because it's definitely not the money. From being a real estate fund manager to, it's definitely not the money is what I'm telling you. And I'm not one to, you can't throw a title on me and think that because some people, they're moved by that. They're moved by a title or employee of the month, parking spaces and stuff like that. That doesn't move me. So having a title of commissioner doesn't move me. It's definitely not the salary that's moving me. So in order for me to go further down this path in politics, it's got to be advantageous to the Black community as a whole.
Yeah. Do you have to abandon your current business? I know you said you can't vote on certain projects that you're working on.
Yes.
But are you still able to run your business?
I'm still able to own all of my firms. I'm still able to own them. There are certain city projects, development projects that we're already on board for that I would have to step back in. So yes. So if we're talking about dollars and cents, the math ain't mathing. And in terms of would I be giving up by winning this race? In terms of, if we're talking about just strictly dollars and cents, where it would make up for itself is my ability to use my experience and to sit at the table to shape policy that's going to help bring the rest of us forward. Because I don't believe in lowering the bar. You don't help the Black community by lowering the bar. You help the Black community by pouring money back into it and then educating us on how to raise ourselves up, but you do not help the Black community by lowering the bar.
Yeah, lowering the bar definitely does not help. And interestingly enough, is we don't need the bar to be lowered, but we don't need you to consistently raise the bar once we hit that bar. Because
Yes,
sometimes
exactly.
it's
So
true.
there's that balance there. Like, hey, we don't need it lower, but we don't need the moving finish line either.
Yeah. Um, man, in terms of fundraising, what does that look like? Do you have to do like dinners or anything, or is this just strictly like what does
No,
that look like?
that's the other part that I'm not used to. Like I'm used to fundraising, but it's fundraising with an attached return. Fundraising, in this respect is a little bit different for me. So I'm getting with my team on that. I've actually hosted, events for other candidates. So again, I'm not new to politics. It's just that I'm used to being an investor who, hey, this person is running. Hey, how can I help you on your campaign? Not necessarily me being the person that's on the ballot. So that's interesting. The fundraising is definitely not anything that's new to me. It's just fundraising in the capacity of a nonprofit space is what's new, because I'm used to raising. It's way easier to raise capital when you're telling them, hey, I'm going to invest it and you're going to get a return. And it just so that's an interesting space that I'm still navigating.
In this instance, though, they get like a tax write-off, so there's tax benefits attached to it.
Yes, I believe so. Don't quote me on that, but I believe so, because even when I've donated to other candidates, I don't typically do it for the tax write-off. I just donate.
Yeah. In terms of networking, um, has your network expanded since you've declared, or like how does that look once you step into political office? That's different,
Well,
man.
no, thankfully, because on the local level, some of the people who are already in office, we already have a working relationship. I mean, if you're doing any type of business with the city, you're going to have a name and face recognition with many people. So that piece hasn't necessarily changed. I would imagine though that, as other businesses come to the table to have their projects and their initiatives reviewed, as a commissioner, that my network would expand in that way. But as far as like the local leadership that is already in place, I'm pretty much on the name and name. We know each other.
Yeah, I still think it's dope though. I feel like anything that you do is going to expand you. So you might be taking a money hit, but man, you're growing your stature within the community, man.
Yeah, that's why I say it has to make sense for the community as a whole, because dollars and cents, it doesn't necessarily make sense for me on a personal level, but in the community as a whole. Because to be honest with you, once you get to the point where you're self-sufficient, you don't need a day job to pay for your bills. Everything else past that is really just icing on the cake. So thankfully, and this is not bragging, but thankfully I've already reached that position where I don't need a day job to pay for my bills. My lights aren't going to get cut off. So financially, I can afford to take that type of hit without, I wouldn't need to get a part-time job or anything to pay my bills. So
Yeah.
I am in a financial space where I can assume this role without affecting myself so much so that, you know what I mean, I'd be back in survival mode.
Yeah. Have you I know it's still relatively early since you declared, but have you gotten any haters out there?
I don't think so, but then again, I'm so naive that I don't see myself as running against them. I see myself as running for the city, not against my opponents. Because to be honest with you, I'm in a no-lose situation, because I was already doing what I'm trying to do for the Black community before I declared my candidacy. If I don't win, I just go back to investing in taking on development projects that moves us forward. If I do win, then I switch seats, and I'm I'm a part of the governing body that reviews these initiatives to make sure that they're making sense for the Black community moving forward. So I really can't lose in that respect.
What is it going to take you to win this election?
Support of the people. Support of the people, really. That's what it comes down to. I think that I'm fairly known in the community that's around our age and down and younger. But the older generation are the ones who traditionally vote more. So you're talking about like really like 35 and up, who typically do more of the voting. So I do have to get my name and face out in those circles.
What's the plan for that?
So I have a campaign manager who is helping me navigate those spaces and to get in those. And thankfully, she's a little bit older than me, so those would be among her peers And so she can open those doors for me. Because even whether you're investing or whether you're a politician, we're not lone rangers out here. We have teams with us. It doesn't matter which side of the table you're on. So thankfully, I do have a team that's helping to get me in and just really just get me in the door, and I can explain what we're looking to do. I don't believe in making false promises. I don't have to campaign on what I plan to do. I can campaign on what I've already done.
Yeah.
And we're just expanding more of that. So there's no like making these false promises just to get your vote.
That's bars right there. I don't have to campaign on what I'm going to do, but what I've already done. That is so powerful. I wish other people campaign like that. They're like, oh, we're going to do this. But it's like, bro, like your track record sucks.
Yeah, because the reality is you don't have to be a politician to make a difference in your community. So if you're telling me that the only way you can make a difference in the community is if I vote for you, that's it sounds like you're selling me a story here.
Yeah. Are you the youngest candidate?
Yes, and for this particular race for District 6, as I know, yes.
What is the age of the other two candidates?
I don't know, but they're both retired, which means that they probably were working longer than I've been alive.
Are they retired businessmen or retired like employees, executives, something like that?
As I understand it, because I don't know either one of them well. I'm not even sure if I've met either one of them. And the reason I say I'm not sure if I've met them, because, we do events, and so we might have been in the same spaces, but like, hey, name and face recognition, no. But as I understand it, they both retired from I think one retired from the local nuclear plant. So I think they were, regular. I don't know them to be, business owners. Not to say they're not. I don't know them well enough to even make that call.
Yeah. So, man, I feel like we've covered everything. Why Augusta?
Augusta is actually the second largest city in Georgia. So it's what I would tell my investors is that Augusta, you can buy the same house for half the price in Atlanta. So, and Atlanta is very saturated. Augusta is a tertiary market. It's approximately the same driving distance between Atlanta, Savannah, and Charlotte. So it's centrally located, so it's great in terms of business. And then, like I said, that even this pre-pandemic, because pandemic has swept the nation in terms of people overpaying for properties, but pre-pandemic, listen, it was very lucrative for our investors to work with us because your investing dollar will go further in Augusta.
Yeah.
We were able to build out real estate portfolios with smaller dollar amounts than, you go to Atlanta, you might be able to get 2 houses for that price. In Augusta, you might be able to get 3 or 4.
What's your thoughts on these gas prices?
The gas prices. Well, first off, I'm so frugal. Let's talk about this. I don't fit your typical investor model because I still drive a 2004 Honda. So gas prices didn't hit me the way it hit other people because I have several vehicles, but among that is a 2004 Honda. So when other people complain about I just grab the keys to the Honda. So the gas prices, they are high, but I'm so frugal. Gas economy is one of my number one drivers when it comes to deciding to purchase a vehicle. So even though I have a truck and I have different things, I'm always going to have a gas friendly car. But I do understand how the gas prices might be able to hitting other people who don't have who are not in a financial position to have several cars to choose from.
So if you had to leave the voters with one kind of last thought, what would it be?
The biggest thing that I would want to leave voters with is I need voters to understand that moving their community forward is a group project. I think too many times politicians position themselves as a savior complex, like a vote for me and I'll fix everything. And then sometimes the community has this idea that if I vote for you, you should be fixing everything. It is a group project. So don't vote for me if you think that I'm going to wave a magic wand. I don't have one to wave. Vote for me if you feel like, hey, there's a sense of responsibility that you have to the community, and you feel as though I'm going to be a representative that's going to align with we're not going to align with everything. We don't even align with our husband and wives on everything, but we align enough where we can say, hey, this is the general direction and the general approach we want to take, but we both have a sense of duty and responsibility for getting us there.
Yeah. Dope. Where can they support what you have going on? Where can they follow you? And where can they participate in this whole thing? What does that look like?
Definitely. So, I'm very accessible. All of my social medias are the same thing. The letter J, Johnson Says. So J Johnson Says. It's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And then you can go to jjohnsonsays.com, and that's my campaign website. So.
Well, I don't want to hold you, but I definitely wanted to flesh out some questions. I'm pretty sure there's way more detailed stuff if I was from Augusta and I knew about the intricacies of things going on. But I definitely wanted to let people know that you're out there making a difference. You're out there young and you are pushing the buck. It's so cool to see so many of my friends doing this, because for so long it was just looking at other people aspire to do these things. And you see all the old people doing it. And now it's like, I have a friend, he ran for Senate. He didn't win, but he ran for Senate. I'm like, man, like we're that age. We're like run for campaign age now. So that's run for office age rather. So that's really cool. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for making time available for us. And I'll make sure to push as much traffic I can your way. Chop some clips up, get it out there. But my name is Charles Oglesby with Jeremy Johnson, and this is the Millionaire